Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/INTB and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's easy. Go to audibletrial.com/INTB.
Honestly, they're not that bad.
Welcome to another episode of It's Not That Bad Podcast. I am Fern here with Dom.
Hello, everybody.
So it's the end of the year.
Wow.
Also the end of the decade.
Wow.
And it really is kind of a big deal because really this last year I think we really came into our own as a podcast. But also I think more so than ever this last decade, like film and everything that comes with that mattered more to me than ever, which end up leading to this podcast anyways. So we're just going to go ahead and talk about stuff that happened this year, movies, TV show, news, and then as well as stuff that happened this decade, same thing, movie, TV show, news. And then, it's kind of a wrap-up because, like I said, not only dealing with the end of a year, but end of a decade.
Yeah.
An interesting decade.
Very, very interesting.
So, let's just kick it off, Dom, and, tell me some things that happened this year.
In the year of our Lord 2019. So this year we saw a lot of culmination of sequels and remakes, and I mean, because that's something we can talk about later, but just this whole decade has just been nothing but being bombarded by these whole things. So that whole anticipation of seeing something new or a sequel to something. So one thing I forgot, the beginning of this year was Glass, which was a sequel to, which we didn't even know we were this whole crossover between Unbreakable and Split that we didn't even know, wow, that was something that was coming, and we saw it, and honestly, it was actually really good. It surprised me because, as I've said, my stance on M. Night Shyamalan is always, I either love him or I hate him. And right now I'm I can't wait to see what he does next because I'm it better not be bad.
Yeah, honestly, I would say the beginning of this decade, you're he's done. I don't care. Stupid.
Yeah.
The end of the decade, you're well, I really actually wonder what's going to happen next.
That's what I know exactly. It's so, it upsets me so much because I'm it's happened for so long too. Because it's every other movie, I'm God, I hate that. Because I think Last Airbender was this decade, right? And then The Visit, which I didn't really like, but I think, did you like it?
I liked it.
But then Split, which we reviewed, and is actually really good. It's really good. And then Glass is a pretty good movie too. It's solid. But also this year, we saw a lot of people following up on movies, right? Or following up on their careers. So Jordan Peele, the follow-up to Get Out was Us, and he not only hit it out of the park, but he hit a grand slam out of the park.
And he also did Twilight.
He brought that back.
With him, he was always a comedy guy. Never even thought about anything other than comedy guy. It was Mad TV was always something in our lives. So him moving from Mad TV and then later on getting the Key and Peele show, that was one thing that we were on right away.
Yeah.
We didn't even we didn't need to wait for a viral video or anything. I was fuck yeah.
As soon as they announced it,
two of the funniest guys on that show have their own show. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And then slowly seeing that show get success, it was oh, cool. And then when it ended, it was I felt like that ended way too early. But really, after that, everything kicked off.
Exactly.
And it's just, even after the show was ending, or did end, or was in the last, whatever, but they did that Keanu movie, and that was it was funny, silly, and that's what I expected from them, right?
Yeah.
Let's, why
that's
wouldn't
what
I?
You expected.
Yeah, why wouldn't I? But then when I heard he was doing a horror film, I was oh, that's interesting. But, didn't really think twice about it. And the next thing you know, he's one of the new faces of horror.
Yeah, it gets
It's
nominated for Best Picture, and he wins an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay.
Yeah, it's so fucking crazy to see his art. But yeah, like, I mean, who would have thought, right?
Exactly.
Who would have thought? Especially because I think a lot of times when stuff like that happens, I mean, I think more so in music, you hear like the sophomore slump, which makes sense because if you put something out which people automatically get drawn to, and then you got to follow that up, even if there isn't any pressure on you physically, like everyone else around you is putting pressure on you because they're like, well, it has to be better than the last one, right?
Yeah.
If the last one was this good, then this one is going to be better.
Yeah, that first one could be a fluke. It could be like you do another one and it's just like what's his name? Josh Trank, who did Fantastic Four, right? Because he hit it out of the park with Chronicle. Everyone loved it. And then he did Fantastic Four and everyone was like, oh yeah, we can't give him a job anymore.
But, you know, I think the fans spoke for everyone when it said, like, no, yeah, he pretty much hit it out of the park with this one. And I think it kind of, that alongside the Twilight Zone coming out and stuff like that, people are like, he knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Also, like, I think this year wasn't as much as maybe the year prior, but I think for the decade too, it's like horror really got like a new
lease on life.
Yeah, because it's like, it's not that it was ever gone, you know.
But it was on life support for the longest time.
Yeah. And it did feel like, I think, especially like, I just watched this movie Pandorum. Mm-hmm. And that was in the beginning, technically the beginning of this decade. And really, like, that was kind of what you got with like a horror film.
Yeah.
Like, there was good elements to it, but then something always kind of brought it down. Like, great act. Like, oh, you have Ben Foster in there. You have Dennis Quaid in there. Oh, it's just like weird horror sci-fi movie. Oh, it's making you feel creepy. And then like the quote unquote things come and it's like, oh, okay. And I feel like that's kind of what horror was for a while.
Yeah. I think
it was really like things were good, but then there was like, it's not that great though.
Well, I think it was a lot of different things, and I guess we could just get into it right now. I mean, because we did a whole like little series on horror a couple of years ago, but I think it was that whole idea of like we were trying to bring horror, because remember in the 90s it was like basically dead, because we had the whole slasher thing, and then the 90s was just kind of like whatever, and then we got into the whole meta, and then we got into found footage, and I think that's really what was killing it, was like, because now they could make it so cheap that they're like, well, they don't even have to give like any real like substance to it. Like they could just be like, oh, well, it's creepy if you don't even show it. Like, oh, it's so shaky you can't even see anything. But I think finally, like those people who grew up with horror like as kids and are finally like adults and can make film, like Ari Aster or like Robert Eggers, right? They can make these films and they could be like, well, they don't have to be stupid like we used to make them. They don't have to be just like dumb slashers. They can actually like make a point, and like like people are actually going to see it. People who normally wouldn't go see these movies are going to see them.
What I think it was is that I think people who always loved horror and have always been around it, you know, it's something that even if we knew it was going to be bad, we watched it. Mm-hmm. I mean, because it's a horror film, so they're like, yeah okay, oh, that movie? Sure, okay, whatever. But I think what happened is this maturity to be like, hey, horror can make you feel all types of emotion.
Yeah.
And still be a horror movie.
Or even like the horror doesn't have to come from just like what we normally think of as horror. Like, we can finally be afraid of white people because they're the most terrifying thing in the world. That's what Get Out showed us.
Yeah. No, but like, yeah, I mean, it's taking that stuff where it's like the one thing that I really liked about The Witch is when that movie came out, that movie was just a period piece.
Ooh, yeah.
But it was a period piece that took on a horror film. Mm-hmm. And it was as rooted in history as you could be.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I think some people didn't like it was because it was like, well, where's the devil? Where are all the monsters?
Yeah.
How come they're not jump scaring me
Well,
every
it's called
second?
The Witch. How come we didn't see more witches? And how come they weren't like ugly and stuff? It's like what Robert Eggers gave us was like a true, like it even says it, and isn't it called like a New England folktale?
Yeah.
Like that's what a folktale is.
Yeah, and that's something that I would say it's hard pressed to find outside of this decade, because those movies I would say were automatically turned into art house films.
Oh yeah. And look what he did with the Lighthouse earlier this year. Is he made you feel isolated, alone, cooped up with this other person that you don't even know if you can trust. He's another white person, and you don't even know if you can trust him, and because he's crazy, and he's telling you, "Wait, I didn't grab the axe. You're the one who's trying to axe me." But yeah, it's like he did such a good job, and then like it's funny too because it's like people went and saw this movie like more so than like they would have like you're right, like a decade ago, like. If you told someone in 2007 like a big blockbuster would have been this movie called The Lighthouse, it's shot like 4:3, it's all black and white. It's about there's only two characters. They don't really talk too much, and it's very like David Lynchy. They look at you like, what the? No, I want to watch Transformers.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly like what this decade built on, at least in a horror aspect, where you can get movies like Midsummer, right? And those aren't just the movies that like, oh no, that's only playing in
Camel View.
Yeah, Camel View for like 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, for anyone
right?
who doesn't know, that's like our art house like theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Like they would only show like those movies for like a few weeks, and it'd be because the theater was only like 5 theaters.
Yeah.
But now it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's literally everywhere. I mean, look at like Uncut Gems. Even with a movie like that, which is basically just like, how can we do this like indie film style?
Yeah.
But that movie has so much buzz that when it got full release, everyone's like, oh, let's go watch it. Oh, we got to see it.
It was a good film, and yeah, you're right. Like that would have been a movie that would have only been like that, The Lighthouse, Midsummer, like a bunch of films that would just have normally been like these movies that are hard. Like, oh, we'd have to wait till they're released on Blu-ray, or we can watch on Netflix now. They're everywhere now. Like people, I love that now. Like people have brought in their like scope of like what they're willing to watch now. Just amazing.
I do feel like streaming has helped change that too, especially when you have like actual really great films being on only streaming platforms, where people are like, oh, I could actually enjoy this movie now because it's a real movie. It's like, well, all movies are real movies, but quality wise, yeah, I get what you're saying. But I do feel like that's changed, because you're right. Some of these films, and we even talked about it before, where some of these films that it went under our noses that we didn't know about 2-3 years ago, it's like, oh, how did I miss that?
Exactly.
Like, I didn't even hear about that.
Two of the best films from last year we missed because I don't think they were being released everywhere, like Assassination Nation.
Assassination Nation was a movie that I wanted to see, but it literally got out of theaters like 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks.
I think Sorry to Bother You was in a lot of, but I don't think,
it was a limited
release though.
Because I remember looking it up once, and they didn't have it like at an AMC, but they had it at like the Harkins over here or something or whatever, right? And yeah, I mean, those are two movies that we absolutely loved last year.
Yeah, and
there were two movies that I didn't even get it. Well, Sorry to Bother You, I think I technically did have a chance, but it was just like, oh, wait till next week.
Yeah.
But Assassination Nation, like, it just came and went.
I don't even remember it being anywhere, like, at all.
But like I said, I think this decade really changed for me. Was appreciating certain type of movies, like we talked about with Z is for Zachariah. 10 years ago, I wouldn't want to sit down and watch that movie.
Yeah.
But I think because now this decade has really helped not only me, but I think me in this decade and starting to appreciate film more, and then going back and seeing like oh, so it wasn't always just me. It was film.
Yeah.
And sitting through a movie like that that's super long. It's so slow movie, but it's not just it's appreciating the fact that it has to be a slow paced movie because the
exactly.
payoff is everything.
Yeah. Or like one movie that we reviewed earlier this year, Apostle, right? I'm pretty sure that's not one that you would have necessarily liked like a decade ago, but like now we watch it with appreciation of like, oh, it's this. It doesn't have to be like a big like reveal of like this monster or this and that. It's like no, the story can be like a slow burning like tale, and like it can kind of deviate off of the path a little bit, but otherwise that like it is still though a true horror film.
Yeah, and I do feel like streaming has kind of helped that
Yeah.
because I think it's easier to say now that people are more impatient when it comes to certain things, especially with like TV shows. When you're like, "What? You're saying that they release it every week, and I gotta wait every week to watch this TV show? That's stupid." It's like that's how it's always been.
Yeah, until very recently, that's how it's always been.
But also, you get those people that will, out of boredom, just sit and be like, "I'll watch this movie. I'll take a chance on this movie. Whatever." And then you get movies like the Black Coat's Daughter I told you about, movie that came out a couple years ago. Wouldn't even think twice about seeing it back in the day. Well, maybe because Emma Roberts is in it. I always liked her.
Ooh, yeah.
But it's a weird like horror movie that plays on this like what's going on. And really like it's not till the end where it like pops off and you're like, oh, okay, fuck. But see, a movie like that having no like blockbuster success makes sense to me. But having it found on a Netflix where you're like, oh, horror movie, cool. Oh, that's the girl who plays Sabrina now? Cool, I'll watch it. And then you watch something like that and you're like, you know what? I actually really like that. And I feel like that's kind of how people get through this barricade of like what is more mainstream and what is more like indie.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that barrier is kind of, I wouldn't say it's like completely gone, but I'd say like there's a good passage through it. Because there's things, like I said, there's things that play off the idea of like this is more independent film, but people will go out of the way now because they're like, oh, it's Adam Sandler and like a not stupid role. I gotta watch that.
Yeah.
And so they'll I think they'll give themselves to the movie more so as opposed to someone watching a Star Wars movie who's like, well, I love all things Star Wars.
Yeah.
I know all about Star Wars. I'm going to go in this movie because I know what I'm going to hate about it. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I think like, especially being younger, there's people who only watch indie films. They're, oh, you have to watch. You never watched Risk Cutters? You have to watch this movie.
Which is funny because it's like, yeah, like that had to be its own genre, indie. Where it's like, I think now it's blurring that line between, well, I'll use this as a way to transition to like TV a little bit. Is like, look at Sam Levin. Is that his name? He did Assassination Nation, like an independent film. He had all these like great ideas, right? Like you look at that film and you just see like the editing for it, the cinematography for it. The next year he brings us Euphoria, this amazing TV show, right? And you can see all of like the influence from Assassination Nation is in this TV show, right? Like the whole, like just the way that they light things, the way that they interact, the way that they it's cut together. Like the one episode that I love is when they're at the carnival and like you keep jumping from character to character, but like it's never like cut to a character. It's like as they're moving, like the camera follows and then it moves into another character. Like it's never like jump cut to. It's like it's smoothly like following each character and like it's I'm just so like glad that finally we have these people who are being like recognized for like, oh yeah, like, oh, you actually did good things, like, hey, maybe we should give you a TV show. But yeah, even like just like the way like television has evolved, it's like, yeah, you could still watch it on TV, but like most people don't do that anymore. It's like it's moved to streaming.
That's kind of where I hope this new decade takes TV, is that they understand that, sure, there is still people being broadcast on national television and cable television. But I think that TV shows made specifically for streaming services should move away from like a cable television or a national network television show blueprint, because the stories being told can still be told, but it doesn't have to be like typical, oh, this is where you would cut to a commercial.
Yeah, because you
like,
still
there's no commercials.
We're still seeing that somewhat in some shows. I forgot what show I was watching where it kind of does that. But yeah, you're right. Like they need to move away from it. Like, and something that they still do is they'll give you like, instead of, they'll say it's like an hour, but no, they give you 42 minutes. It's like, no, you guys aren't limited to commercials anymore. You don't have to like, that was for something for TV. This, you could actually give us a full hour of content.
And like that's kind of where I hope we move from, because there's TV shows that I feel like would benefit from just being a streaming service television show. It's fine.
One that I think that does it really good is Sabrina. They let you skip all of the intro and the recap, but if you want to, it's there. Like if you really want to watch like the recaps, they're done and they're stylized and everything. But like you can just go ahead and skip all that. Like I appreciate that they don't like cut like the episodes down for it. Like it's still like 40 minutes for the episode, which that show is so good. Yeah. I can't wait for that show to come back.
I think that's kind of understandable for this last decade, because this last decade really did make streaming a thing. I would say we started the decade, I was like, that's impossible. And ended it with like, things need to get 2 streaming services.
It's like when we started this decade, we had Netflix and Hulu, and that's it, right? One was like, oh, that's where you watch movies, but you wouldn't watch on there. It's going to take too long to buffer. You might as well just order it through the mail.
Why don't you get the DVD instead?
No, I paid extra for the Blu-ray.
Oh, you got Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Wow.
But then as like the internet finally like, and that's something that I was thinking about. I was like, this decade really like, how many decades ago like they have like a computer filled a whole room, right? And then the amount of time it took to build a personal computer, right? And that was what, like the 80s or something? And then from that point to put it into a phone, and then from put it into a phone to put it onto your watch, right? It's just like, it's crazy how much like technology has just like exploded. And so like along with that goes like the internet. So the internet's got like faster and faster and faster. Because remember, days of dial-up and stuff, and it was so slow. Like, we don't have time to set on here. It's going to take too long. But now, like, the internet, you get on your phone, and it loads right away, right? And it's just like, it's like you can literally watch a movie now because it loads that fast.
The fact that we're even here is kind of crazy to think about. Mm-hmm. The beginning of the decade started off as just like, oh, that's weird. That's interesting. Like, I didn't even want Hulu. Like, Hulu was so dumb. So I was like, I have a DVR. Just record everything. But as it started to grow, then it was like, oh, well, now Netflix has originals, so we have to watch it only on Netflix. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, Hulu's starting it. Oh, well, what, Amazon? What? They got awards for making movies? Amazon? So at a certain point, it completely changed. And so it does make sense that there's still, I think, like leftover remnants of like what TV shows have to be, what movies have to be. And I feel like with movies, it's already changing, because I think now with streaming services, people are starting to make things that they've always wanted to make, and they don't have to worry about like, well, now we got to sell this script and we got to worry about this and that. Like, I think this decade proved like some of our favorite people, our new favorite people with, was it Justin Benson and the other guy from Resolution, and Yeah, all that stuff. Like the cool thing with those people is, especially in this decade, they realize like, hey, we could just make these movies and then put them on these streaming services, right? And sure, I get like maybe they're not getting like the most money or biggest awards or whatever, but for people like us, it's amazing to see this where it's like, oh shit, these guys just went out and did it, and then they did it so well, and it's not like back in the day where you would hope one day someone would see your movie. No, we could just go on Amazon, go on Netflix, and be like, hey, look at this weird small independent movie.
And what I love about those films are they've become like of the whole decade, I would put them on like the top tier of my favorite from this whole decade. Because yeah, sure, they're like resolution, like we've talked about before, you can tell super low budget, like the way it looks, the way it's shot, right? But the fact that they wrote and they came up with this idea and they directed this film so good, like the story is just so good. It's like everything in it, the acting, like, you know what I mean, like everything from that film is just so good. It blows away like any other film because of that. It's like yeah, you could give me something like Ready Player One or Bohemian Rhapsody, but this movie, though it doesn't look as good as those films, blows all of those out of the water. Like I would rather watch this film 100 times over those movies because they are just like that good. They are like one of my favorite, like, because I don't really like listing things like, oh, this was the best one and then here's number 2, but I would put it on like a list of here's my favorite films of the decade.
And really, I mean, if someone would told me about the Endless prior to this decade, it would be like my friend in high school who was like, oh, you never seen the Endless? Oh, it's like super good. I have the DVD of it. Like, I'll let you borrow it. You know, but now we don't have to worry about that. We can literally find this stuff, like just find it on our own. And I think that's what this decade really did. Is they changed this idea of like who can be a creator now.
Yeah.
I think YouTube helped that too. But speaking just with like TV shows and whatnot, because people then decided that they can just make whatever they want and people can watch it whenever they want. So you have people like Ari Aster making these short films that at one point in time just would have been like art school films, and this is a film that he made about, you know, but now it's like, oh, he can make that. Sure, maybe he's in school, maybe he's not, but he can make that, distribute it right away. And that's something I think that it's technology, it's streaming, it's everything kind of. I mean, we even talk about now where, remember back in the day getting, this camera has 14 stops of dynamic range. Look how crisp this 1080p video is. Yeah, this is a $8,000 camera. Now we have things that are like, yeah, you see my phone right here? Yeah, it shoots in 4K.
Yeah.
Like having that ability to film and to make things look good is so much easier now. So I think that's also partial. Like I think that's kind of our around generation, where before doing film stuff was so difficult because you had to have this camera.
Yeah.
Like no matter what, you had to have this camera and all of this sound equipment or whatever. And now you can have like a fairly good professional setup for, I would say, under $5,000. And I'm talking about like stuff that you can probably end up getting on Netflix, getting on Hulu. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think like this decade really did change that. For people like I said, it's YouTube, it's streaming, it's equipment being so cheap and so easy to get, and it's meme culture too. It's people saying like, yeah, I don't have to follow the norm anymore.
I mean, whoever you are, whatever generation you are, but like you have to at least say like, oh yeah, this is kind of where it's going. These people are the next influencers, I guess I'd call them, right? Because that's what they're gonna be. Like Vine was an influence for a while. YouTube was an influence. It's still is. I think it's kind of fallen just a little bit. It's still like there, right? Like, but then we're starting to see like things in like Mixer and like Twitch and like all these other places, right? Where these like so-called influencers and like Instagram and Twitter, but it's like it's just part of that whole like idea that the people that you think like we talked about like the idea of like celebrity, right? Baby boomers are like, oh, that's like dead, but it's like no, it's changed from what you were told Clark Gable is a superstar, but it's like now it's
David Dobrik.
yeah, there you go. It's like that's who like, and you might be like who? It's like no, but if you told like a young kid that, like he'd be like, oh yeah, I know who that is. Yeah.
And that's cool too, because for people like us who I would say we're the older aspect of it, but still like influenced by it, is we can see people like these comedians on Instagram, and all they're doing is making funny videos, but it's like you follow them and then you start following their careers and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, hey, this guy was in this movie. I'm going to go watch this movie. And that's something that we never had before.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say like it really did start in the early 2000s, but this last decade really, I think, set the bar that we kind of make these people. And that's what I'm saying with like people like Ari Aster and stuff like that. He went out and made these short films, and then people were like, you see this fucked up short film? Like, he made such an impact just making this weird ass film that continued, and he kept making stuff, and people were like, hey, maybe we should give this guy a chance.
Or even like bigger filmmakers went and they start like look at Neil Blomkamp. He went from like making these bigger budget sci-fi films to making smaller sci-fi shorts, and then that he put online. It's like it's going from one to the other.
Yeah.
Like people are like interchanging all this stuff.
Like how many times have I told you where, because I like watching sci-fi shorts, where like I'll watch some random sci-fi short and be like, oh, that's the kid from Game of Thrones, on some like weird small indie like sci-fi thing. Or I watched the one with that girl from Stranger Things.
Yeah, Natalia Dyer.
It's like these people just show up in the stuff because now it's like, oh, you can actually get seen in this.
Yeah, it's not unheard of too, because it's not like, I think in the past it would have been seen as like, oh, you don't want to do that. You're a big star. You're on Netflix's biggest show, Stranger Things. Why would you do that? It's like because she wants to. Like, I feel like we've all finally figured out like, hey, maybe if we all just kind of like watch these things and like are involved with these things, we all benefit from them.
Yeah, I do feel like this decade has shown like, hey, independent creators, small creators, whatever, we have more say than anything, because they're the ones who started to build these fan bases before anything, because they're the ones who are like, oh, hey, yeah, I know you guys like this and blah, blah, blah. Like, check out my short film or whatever. And it's like, it's crazy because, yeah, you're right. Like, these people are the ones that are making this content for these people. The people are like, I like this. Then it starts to get more. Then Hollywood pays attention. And like, hey, yeah, you know, this guy, he did this really cool thing. He's still making really interesting stuff. Like, maybe we should give him a chance.
Yeah.
Then you have the people like us who are like, yeah, of course I remember. Like, yeah, I've been following this guy for, you know, a few years now. He's amazing, whatever. And that slowly starts to build this, like, new wave of entertainer, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? Where you may see it as dumb as this David Dobrik guy being stupid and, oh, he's just an internet guy. But his millions upon millions upon millions of fans are the ones who go out of the way to be like, oh, I like this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, whatever he's in. Oh, cool. Like, oh, I'm about this, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
And see, and I think this year really showed that the age of new Hollywood is dead, right? Like, we have moved on. Just as in the 70s, Hollywood had to move on to like new Hollywood. Oh, look at Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese and George Lucas, right? All these like, look how young and fresh they are. Like, they come up with all these like interesting ideas. But like, we're so far removed from that now that we're finally like, everything they say like doesn't go anymore. great. Like we see when Martin Scorsese's like comments, like even like a few years ago, we would have been like, those stupid like Hollywood insiders would have been like, and critics on the internet would have been like, yeah, I agree with Martin Scorsese. Like superhero, like they're gonna burst. The bubble's gonna burst soon. So like, and we talked about that before, but it's like no, like they have to learn that the way that movies are made and the way entertainment is nowadays has changed. I'm sorry that you guys are like 70, 80 year old and like you don't like it, but you can't just sit here yelling at clouds anymore. I don't know. It's just the whole thing to me is like finally we can put to rest these filmmakers because they should like that's what I think that should happen is that they should at a certain point pass on to people like, hey, you guys are the new creators nowadays. Good, you guys make film.
Yeah, because it feels weird that you have Steven Spielberg talking about how these Netflix movies shouldn't make it, blah, 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 right? Like, oh, they're not real film and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, a year later, he's like, oh, yeah, so I signed on to be exclusive to, like, on streaming service.
Apple TV or Apple Plus, right? Or is that Quibi?
It's both, I think. What? But, yeah, I mean, you have that, right? Then you have, like, Martin Scorsese saying, like, oh, it's this and that. It's like, okay, but it'd be one thing if you're like, I'm a purist. I only use 35 millimeter film, blah, 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 whatever. And it's like, no, you're still taking advantage of technology. Yeah. You're using de-aging technology in this fucking movie. If you believe that these were all just this and that, there's big spectacles. It's like, then why would you use why would you use their cameras? Why would you use the technology? Why would you use any of that? But if you were like, maybe it's, I'm old and I don't understand that, but look at how much money they're making. Look how much people love these movies. That's just what it is. It's like, okay, yeah, because you can grow and say, hey, this is, I mean, the best and worst example of it is Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
He's like, he's not trying to be like, well, I'm going to make this movie, it's the greatest. It's like, no, he's like, how can I make movies for old people?
Yeah, that's what he does.
Yeah, he makes movies and all these old people watching.
He knows his audience and he gives them what they want.
So I think you're totally right because in the same vein, you still have people like Guillermo del Toro, who's been doing this for years, who's like, yeah, I'm doing this, whatever, but look at how great this film is, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, you guys should check this out. And it's like, yeah, because he knows that he could never make something like a Euphoria. That's not who he is. That's not him. But what he can do is this, and this. And he's not trying to put down like, oh, this is dumb. Why would they use drugs all the time? This is so stupid. Oh, you should never watch this.
You know what's weird? It sounds like it's because he's not white.
Yeah. I think this decade really did show like we can accept it for what it is, but also leave it in the past.
Yeah, like Last Jedi said, let the past die. Yeah. Kill it if you have to.
Yeah, because I mean, we're still on this like nostalgia kick, right? Mm-hmm. Where something like a Stranger Things can occur. Mm-hmm. People love it. They love everything about it. It relies on like nostalgia stuff, but it takes its like, yeah, this is like a place in the 80s, with like MK Ultra, and like, child torture and stuff. And I was like, okay. And then even like taking things where like stuff like it, right? Yeah. Taking things that are even better, The Shining. Taking something as classic as The Shining, and then saying like, yeah, so we're gonna do a second part to this movie. I mean, it's a second part to the book, but also to the movie. So like, it's gonna be a weird mix of it, and we're gonna do it. And knowing that people are gonna be like, well, I'm ready to judge it, and they just went full forward and be like, no, it's fucking great.
I think though that they trusted the right person with it, like Mike Flanagan. Like, I think if they gave it to someone else, it would have been terrible. But I think he's like the perfect person to like have done that.
Hey, James Cameron, you think you can make this? Oh my
God, no!
It's like, yes, I'll get my 4D cameras ready for this. Yeah, I made 4D cameras.
Jesus fucking Christ!
But yeah, I mean, it's not that we're completely neglecting this stuff, but it's more of borrowing from the past to make this stuff for the future so much better.
And I think that works because things that I watched as a kid and I was told like, hey, these were influenced by these movies. I went back and I watched some of those films. And I'd be like, oh, it's kind of boring, but it is good. I could see where they got this and this, but I love how they took that and they transformed it. And that's what we're doing now is like, we're taking from the past and we're transforming it, and it's for the better. And what I hate is like, that's what like the new Hollywood did is like, they did the exact same thing. They took from what they loved as kids and they made it, right? And then these new people do that and they're like, well, that's not cinema. It's like that. Yes, it is. Like, you have no right to call something cinema. And I love that like it was like divided because in the past it would have all 100% been on Martin Scorsese's side. Everybody would have been like, well, he's the authority, he makes films. But it's like, no, in this new age it's like, no, he's old, he's a boomer, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He should give up.
Yeah. And really I think one of the best examples of that, at least for me, is Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars came out fucking 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they're still making them today.
Yep.
You know they have to be different.
Yeah.
They can't be the same. So, of course, they're not going to make it the same way. Of course, they're going to utilize so much better. So, of course, this is going to look a lot better.
Yeah.
So, but I think what they did really well with these new ones is that they took this lived-in universe and they expanded it. They still, like, worked with practical effects, right? It wasn't like the prequels where it's like, we'll just do it all in post. They utilized a ton of practical effects, but still we're like, well, we have amazing CG. Of course we're going to use this for this, right? And then so you get this like amazing looking movie, but people hate it because, well, it's not like the movie that was like 40 years ago. And it's like, good.
Yeah.
I would hate if it was like that movie.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, as much as I love Star Wars, I would never want Star Wars to revert back to that.
What I hate is that I feel like people want things to be, and this is something that I feel like we're finally getting out of this, is that they just want something to rant and rave about, right? And I think that's something that came up this past decade was that the internet and YouTube helped to create this culture of, I'm not going to sit here and review a film. I'm going to tell you why I hated this film. Instead of giving you reasons why you should go out and, well, like what a real critic used to do, where they'd be like, well, here's the merits of the films. Here's like what it didn't do too well. Here's a score. Go see it if you want to. It became more of, well, I hate this movie because this, and this. And it's like, okay, but like, why was it? What was good about it though? I don't care. Like, I hated it because this and that, and like, because why didn't she move out of the way? And that I just, that to me, I think helped to like, and I think Star Wars helped to build that because they're like, wait, I said something bad about Star Wars. It got me like 100,000 views. Huh. If I just make another video about why I hate Star Wars, I think I'll get more, right?
But that's also, like I said, that ties into the internet, technology, YouTube, all this stuff. It gives those people, like, as much as we hate it, and I mean, obviously because we made this podcast, it gives people that voice that we don't have to worry about, which is both good and bad, but we don't have to worry about having to hear some 45-year-old guy talk about how, well, here's why assassination nation doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, but you're looking at it through a 45-year-old man who lives in the suburbs, who, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're so far removed from the movie. But at the same point, yeah, you do get those people where they're like, well, here's why I hate it. Like, those girls wouldn't be able to use those guns like that. That's so unrealistic, blah, blah, blah. Of course the jocks would because they grew up that way, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you have those people. I get it. But that's where our podcast started, was because, like, we do try to review films, but they're not really reviews. It's more of like, hey, film is so good that you can watch something and say, that's entertaining. And our podcast was made because of this negativity towards like, let me tell you why I hate everything about this movie. We came back and are like, well, okay, let me tell you why I love everything about this movie.
Yeah.
Because even though things do have faults, they can still be enjoyable. And I think that one thing that happened this last decade is people just look at like, yeah, you're right. That is, look how bad that is. Of course that's a bad movie. But it's like, no, it's not a bad movie. Those things are bad. Sure, I get it. Is it a bad movie? No. Let me tell you why it's not. Because it's so easy, I think, now to say, well, you're on this side or you're on that side. You can't be in the middle. And we're sitting here like, why?
Why not? That's what we...
like, let me tell you how much I love this shitty movie.
And then, yeah, it's that idea that we saw what film nerds would say all the time, right? Oh, they only like these specific ones because of this and this and this. Oh, you're not a true like film aficionado because you've never seen insert some dumb Steven Spielberg movie here or something.
Insert some Criterion film collection movie here.
Exactly. And then we saw like the internet just like it for some reason. Well, YouTube, I think, because it rewards people watching it, and I think because people like to hate watch things, and because they want like that, it's that idea that they're like, oh yeah, like, oh I agree because I hate this so much, and so it like magnified it like tenfold, and it just finally pushed us to this thought of, well, why do we have to watch people just sitting there hating things? Like, can't we sit there and just like enjoy something? Like it's that whole argument that we had on here before a long time ago. We got it out of the way. It's art versus entertainment. It's both. We agree. It's both. Sometimes it's a little bit more artful. Sometimes it's a little bit more entertainment. It's like Rise of Skywalker, right? Like people had hyped it up. They kind of knew what they were in for, but like this idea that, oh well, we have to hate it because of this. It's like, no. You can sit there and you can like it even for its faults. Like, you know what a Star Wars film is going to give you. Like, you know it's not going to answer all your questions. You know it's not going to do this. It's not going to do that. But what it's going to give you is a cool lightsaber battle. Did you get that? Multiple times. Is it something cheesy where, like, the dark side comes up for out of nowhere? Yeah. Is it, like, some cheesy dialogue a lot of times? Yeah. Is it starship battles and stuff like that? Yeah. That's why it's, like, I would give Rise of Skywalker a pretty good review because it did what I thought it was going to do.
I mean, honestly, everything that this new Star Wars and everything built off of was just because we didn't see it in the original doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Yeah. You have a whole fucking universe that exists outside of those movies. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to see kind of how things have come, because you have those people that won't let go of the past. Then you have the people who just want to ignore the past. But then you also have the people who are like, well, why can't we just have both?
Yeah.
And that's where you get cool stuff like Rise of Skywalker and this whole Disney trilogy, even if you hate it, but you also love it, but you just hate all the bad things, but you hate all of it, but you also actually love it. Or you get stuff like Castle Rock that built off of 40 something years of this weird ass glasses wearing motherfucker who was probably on coke half of his life.
He literally was.
You have this whole universe that it's building off of, and this last season took someone that I actually really liked, or a book that I really liked was Misery. They took that whole thing, and it's like, yeah, works.
And what also they did too that I like is that maybe the first season was like, it was good, but it actually tied in so well to that first season that it makes the first season like more enjoyable, I think, afterwards. And it also makes you think like, well, where the hell do they go from here? Like, so what does that mean? Like, what do a lot of the things mean from the show? And it's like, yeah, you're right. You just have to look at the books. Like, Stephen King's written all this other stuff that it's like, it leaves everything so wide open that I think will also surprise a lot of people, but it like also the people who have been, I was gonna say true believers, constant readers, people who've been constant readers will enjoy because they'll be able to get the reference, right?
Yeah.
But then these new people finally get to like enjoy, like, wait, so you're telling me that there's this whole universe outside of this?
But like, see, instead of just living in the past and trying to, well, how can we place this in the 40s so this story can make sense, or how can we tie in this from, oh, this has to be from the 80s, so they're just like, no, we'll still connect it.
Yeah,
we'll still have this, we'll still have that guy, but it did it in its own way.
That's like what I like about Dr. Sleep, is that it's not like the book. The book I can sit and read and enjoy it as much as I want, but the movie is its own thing. Like, they did a good job of concluding The Shining, but also making a sequel because the book had a sequel. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like rectifying itself.
I'll say this, that this last decade, I honestly think it was a big change for entertainment in general. I mean, one thing that we didn't even talk about, but obviously was a big thing, was kind of the change in Hollywood, right? The Me Too movement really pushing through. And I mean, sure, you can come out against your abuser like a Kevin Spacey and then you die randomly the next day. I mean,
Strange.
sure, weird.
Or even you can accuse someone and then they all of a sudden die out of nowhere, like a Jeffrey Epstein.
Weird, crazy.
Strange, huh?
But either way, like, there is a change, and we see it. Obviously, we see it with like I said, we see it with Netflix, we see it with Hulu and all these streaming services.
Hopefully, the Academy Award. I mean, they finally learned at least somewhat their lesson in this past decade, because
Well, I mean, like, I think it's this last decade has really started the change. So the next decade, I think that's where we're gonna see it. At the end of the next decade, we should be able to see these Netflix movies like just up there, like beating out the movies that shouldn't even be nominated.
And then
we should see like the Netflix TV shows get the same amount of praise as like, what was it, The Newsroom or something?
The morning show.
Oh yeah.
Or even like this idea that like, oh, there's only one person of color that's won Best Actress. Maybe this decade can finally show us like, hey, maybe what we've been saying is wrong, right? Maybe they can learn from what they've done in the past. Or maybe like only one woman has ever won for Best Director. Maybe finally, like, I think that's what it is that we can look to this next decade and think maybe like we finally come to our senses.
Maybe this next decade would be that change where we'll stop overlooking these people and say, well, I mean, Martin Scorsese made a film this year, and that's a big thing.
And that's something that the Academy keeps doing, is like Steven Spielberg, like The Post, it was nominated for Best Picture. Why? Bridge of Spies, it was nominated for Best Picture. Why? Oh, because Steven Spielberg directed it. Martin Scorsese did this, so we have to nominate him. It's like, why? Why do we have to? And then like Quentin Tarantino too. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's going to be nominated, but like, why, right? He should have won for literally any other movie he's made. Like Django Unchained, he should have won for that. Hateful Eight, he should have won for that. That movie is so good. Like the idea that you can put like all these characters into one setting and give you a 3-hour film and be like, yeah, you're gonna like it.
Yeah, I'd be like, you think I'm stupid?
And then what? You ended up liking it?
I fucking love it.
It's so good.
It's like, it's tied for my favorite.
Yeah, it's like he should have won for, and I feel like he's gonna be nominated for Best Director. He's gonna win because they're gonna be like, oh, you deserve it. Like they did that with Martin Scorsese with The Departed.
Like, I like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a great film, but is it his best film?
No.
Is it one of the better films this year? Sure.
Yeah.
But when you look back at it like that, and it may not seem like a big deal, but then you look back and you're like, yeah, but Avatar was nominated.
God damn it.
I remember
10 years ago, it was nominated. And then look back a year ago, Bohemian Rhapsody was nominated. Oh my God.
Movies that have no business being nominated get nominated.
Yeah.
And that's also something I really hope that does change. I really feel like it's not going to, at least like in the radical way that I think we want to, but like these award shows and all this stuff, like being, having those movies. But I mean, it's something that I kind of wish for, but I don't know. I feel like if there is any part of like old Hollywood that is stubborn and won't die away, it's the award shows, because it's the best way for them to pat themselves on the back.
Once those baby boomers die, though, it's going to change. I mean, it's still going to take a little bit, but
that's what I'm saying. Like, hopefully this next decade starts the trend.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be as fast as we think it's going to be.
We'd want it to be quicker, but it's going to be till 2030 when finally boomers are
even though we have a lot of stuff that we're looking forward to for this next year, next decade, whatever, I feel like this last decade has been really phenomenal. Like I said, I think partially for me, it's because this is like the last 10 years or so is when I really started to give more appreciation to film and stuff. But I also feel like these, like we said, with this last 10 years, a lot of things have changed. And so one of the biggest things this last decade really has been the MCU.
Yeah.
Something that never seemed possible. Something that sounded so ridiculous. This last 10 years,
I think,
like, nah, it's okay.
Even when we got it, we were still amazed at the beginning because they were like, no, these movies connect. No, well, and then like piecing it together too, like from the end credit scenes, like or post credit scenes. I mean, like that even to itself is like you never saw that before.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when Avengers came out, and it's like, I can't believe that this is a real thing. Like,
that was
all the people.
Can you believe that? How long ago that was?
Yeah, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge deal. It was something that these multiple different these multiple movies with these different characters all coming together from one film was crazy. It's like that never happens.
Yeah.
And then this year we get was it Endgame?
Endgame. And
it's like, oh, okay, yeah. So 2012 me didn't know shit.
Yeah. and even 2015 us with Age of Ultron. We still didn't. We thought like, damn, look at how much it's grown.
Yeah,
and it's like, nah, that's nothing.
And it really, like, even now, honestly, it's such a spectacle because it's never been done in the history of film. Mm-mm. Sure, you could say like, yeah, but Star Trek had all these different movies, and it's like, yeah, okay, sure, these separate movies, but this has been like a continuous storyline.
Yeah,
and it keeps going, and it's still going, and not only that, is this next year it's gonna grow. Mm-hmm. Like, we're getting TV shows that are specifically tied into what's going on in the main story. I mean, we kind of had like a little bit that's kind of tied in,
or like that kind of hinted that it was tied in, but it never like explicitly said it was tied in.
But now we have like, oh no, stuff that happens in this TV show, it's gonna matter for the movies. And this is what, 20-something films in the making, and we're still like
22.
Yeah, we're still like, all right, I'm in it. Yeah. Sure. And that's great. If you think about it, 23 films or so that this shit's been going. Those last 10 years plus of it's been going. It seems like it's unreal.
Yeah.
But here we are. It's crazy.
Just so amazing. And yeah, this whole idea of just like that it's just expanding beyond what we originally thought. And then we were getting one a year, an MCU movie, and then we were getting 2, and now we get 3, and I think are they gonna push for 4?
I don't know.
Oh man, that'd be crazy. But just imagine that, like 3 films in a whole year. Because like I forgot that Captain Marvel was this year too. I was like, oh shit, yeah. Because it's like that movie is good by itself, and then you get Endgame, and then Spider-Man. But yeah, you're right. Like the idea that like it's gonna change even more. It's like, oh, it's a couple of movies. Oh no, but also these TV shows that are tying in that we have to watch. But like, and some people complain about it, but it's like, but if you're invested in this like we are, like you're gonna watch it.
Yeah.
Like it's like those people who watch like the Arrowverse, right? Oh, they love Arrow and the Flash, but they go out of their way to watch all the other ones like Supergirl.
Yeah, Supergirl's one.
Doom Patrol
now. Is that part of it? I don't know.
Teen Titans.
Is that a part of it?
I think so. But anyways, they're gonna go out of their way to watch them, right? No matter if they're all on completely different stations or streaming sites or whatever, right? But I think they consolidated them. I think they're all on either CW or. Does DC still have their own app?
They still have it.
Whatever. Anyways, but yeah, like that's what I think. Disney saw this and they were like, yeah, you know what, we got to do this, right?
And also, I mean, alongside that, that's also why I love what they're doing with Star Wars, because before we said this in our last episode, but after the original trilogy, the EU came, and then after the EU came, or I guess while that was still going on, George Lucas made the prequel trilogies. But what he did with the prequel trilogies is he's like, yeah, some of the stuff that you guys said doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And basically just made his own movies. But what Disney did, what I feel like people aren't giving them enough credit is, sure, they said all that stuff is legends. Sure, it pisses people off. But what they did is like, we're going to make our own coherent storyline.
Yeah, they streamlined it.
Yeah, so they still tied in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. Then they knew how amazing this Attack of the Clones TV show was / first movie, and they're like, yeah, no, that's also part of it, which actually adds so much to it.
Yeah.
And then not only that, they're like, oh yeah, so we're gonna do this other TV show now, and it's gonna take place like after the movies and blah blah blah, whatever, right? And then that like adds so much to it. And then they're doing the TV shows now, like the live action TV shows now, and that's adding to it. And sure, you could say that you fucking hate Disney for ruining Star Wars and blah blah blah, but they're doing something that has never been done before.
Yeah.
And it's making everything coherent. It's making everything one thing. It's now where in the prequels where he says Darth Plagueis, right? You're like, oh, that's amazing. And in literally one sentence, George Lucas could have said, yeah, Darth Plagueis, he was actually born on this planet, and he wasn't actually as powerful as you think, and that's why Darth Sidious killed him, and literally ruin your 10 years of building this guy up. He could have done that. Disney, on the other hand, is saying like, no, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right? If we're gonna do it, we're gonna bring in these characters or these people, and they're canon, but we don't know everything yet, right? That's something we can explore later. And that's something amazing. That's something you didn't get for Star Wars before. You literally had 3 different entities. You had the original, you had the EU, you had the prequels. And even though they played off of similar characters, they were all different things. Disney brought them together.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have got that this last 10 years if it wasn't for Disney. I know it sounds like I'm sucking Disney off, but they actually did a really cool thing. And it amazes me that people hate this like Disney era Star Wars, where it's like, but they're making everything actual make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because before Disney bought George, they used to have different layers. So not only was there the expanded universe, but there was layers to the expanded universe. So basically it was whatever George Lucas said. So whatever EU was that wasn't discounted by George Lucas. So anything George Lucas said was canon, but was expanded universe. Then anything else that was not discounted by the prequels or the original trilogy, and then everything else. Like they literally had a whole, like I'm not joking, they had like this whole layered cake of what was canon. Yeah. And so you could write something that was like on the very bottom that was just not canon. But then you could write something that was like George Lucas had kind of said was canon, but wasn't in the films.
Yeah.
And so then Disney came and was like, all that's just legends. And I think, yeah, and like it just kind of wiped things away, and people were like, I've been spending 30 years of my life writing this fan fiction, and now it's all gone. And it's like,
I mean, George Lucas did the same thing for, how many, who knows how many people. But like what Disney did is they're like, yeah, we're going to try to bring in everything together.
What they don't remember is that Star Wars, the original one in 1977, is literally George Lucas was like, well, I want my own Flash Gordon. So he wrote fan fiction of Flash Gordon and made Star Wars. I don't know. It just like upsets me the whole time because it's like you people are like such hypocrites because it's like he literally he did that and then you're writing all this stuff, but like why can't for you that be true? But like just because Disney says it's not doesn't mean like that's the whole point of Legends, isn't it? Is that they're like, hey, it's not canonical, but it's still here.
And that's just giving credit where credit's due. I'm not trying to say that everything Disney did is amazing, but I'm saying that what they're continuously doing is so much more than you got before.
Yeah.
And it's weird that people hate it. But also like I think it speaks a lot about not only just us but the decade where we're still able to have these huge blockbuster movies, these Star Wars, these Avenger movies, whatever, right? And they're a big part of the decade. But also, like we said, a lot of indie films that came out this decade that really changed the game. Like, It's so crazy that this decade kind of had things that came out that are like, didn't seem like a big deal, but then now you're like, oh, like one of my favorite movies, Ex Machina, came out this year. And
it's a good one.
I think at the time it was like, oh yeah, it's a really good movie. But now it's grown to be like, oh no, that's the movie. Like people still talk about it like, oh, that's one of the best like sci-fi films ever. You have to watch it. We were talking about us earlier. I think Jordan Peele made Lupita like watch that movie. He was like, yeah, watch it.
Yeah, because you could just totally tell from the way that she moves is like that. That's such a good film. And then just an offshoot from there, but like Annihilation, like this film last year. Was it last year already? Damn. This film that a lot of people wrote off for some reason, but it's so good. Like it's everything that we love in sci-fi, like finally like in a bigger picture. Like Alex Garland is able to come up with these like sci-fi like obviously we reviewed Sunshine this year and we did Ex Machina and we did Annihilation, but like his next step is he was so fed up with Hollywood and like big and like producers and stuff that he's like, I'm moving to TV and like I can't wait to see what he's gonna do.
Devs,
with devs.
And like I'm not saying that indie films this year are the best. I'm just saying that I feel like they got a different set of legs.
Yeah,
it's bring it to a wider audience that it didn't have before, and people are starting to, like I said, that movie is very much a small independent movie that's being appreciated way bigger than it probably would have been 10 years ago. I mean, sure, maybe I like it more because it's like sci-fi and shit, and I like that, but even then, like, it's, I don't know, that movie, what it set up, what he's been able to do, like after that and everything after that, it just seems like he's going in a direction where, yeah, you're right. He decided like, I'm done just writing for people and letting them take care of all my work and blah, blah, blah. I want to be more hands-on. And that's something we talked about earlier is like, that's what we were able to get this year was people like him. He had a career before. Mm-hmm. He did all this stuff prior to.
Yeah.
But then he was like, you know what? I'm going to take my career in my own hands.
And then looking at someone who they had a previous career, they hadn't really done too much, and they come back and they knock it out of the park. Look at George Miller with Mad Max, Fury Road. Like, that movie actually made me, like, love Mad Max. Because before I really didn't care.
Yeah,
like,
it was just like, oh, yeah, I remember those movies.
Yeah, but, like, this older, like, he's, like, how old is he? He's got to be like 70-something now. But he comes out of nowhere. He's like, oh, I'm going to make a sequel to this film series that was dormant for, like, had already had 3 films. Like, I'm gonna recast, and people like my mom, boomers, get all upset. Like, well, no, Mel Gibson, the Jew hater, should be Mad Max, and it's like, no, but like the fact that he recasted, then also like it's not even really a Mad Max film because it's more about Charlize Theron's character and like what they're going through, and like fact that he mixed practical with special effects, and this movie's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like I can't believe
that's
movie,
something that I feel like we would never get out of a Steven Spielberg. Like
No.
you would never get out of someone like Martin Scorsese, right? Also, want to give it up to Donnell Gleeson for his last 10 years.
Yes.
I didn't even realize, like, for the longest time, I didn't realize, like, how much of everything he's been in.
Yeah. It's crazy. He started off in Harry Potter, and then he just explodes to being, like, everywhere.
Yeah. It's crazy because he literally is everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, we just brought up Ex Machina.
He's in X Machina. He's in The Little Stranger. That's one that we haven't reviewed, but we loved it when we saw it. It's just so like good.
Yeah. Like I said, probably one of the coolest decades ever.
Yeah.
He's just like, yeah, I'm gonna make all these fucking amazing films. Oh, you know that film that you like? I'm probably in it.
He was in True Grit. I love True Grit.
He was in Star Wars.
He was in Star Wars. God damn it. He was in Peter Rabbit. But he was in Black Mirror too, which we didn't even talk about Black Mirror, which is amazing. But yeah, this whole decade, like, and I was talking, we saw Uncut Gems, and I was like, this movie, I don't know, what were we talking? We were talking about that, and then when, for some reason, I got into Yorgos Lanthimos, I was like, this whole decade has been so good for him. He went from being like doing The Lobster, which is just a weird film, and I think it got nominated for screenplay. I know it got a few awards, but then The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and then The Favorite, and we're like, and it gets nominated for Best Picture, and we're like, good for him, because that movie was so good, and I just can't wait for like anything else like he does, because I'm gonna be right there. And then speaking of directors, Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, that's true.
This whole decade, like, he started with French films, and then I think he did Sicario, amazing. He did Blade Runner 2049. That is such a beautiful like film, and it's such a great story. And I feel like that's one that we talked about that not a lot of people liked for some reason.
It's crazy because as big as like a Blade Runner is, right? This movie came out and was like, yeah, fuck that movie.
Yeah.
Like
it really did.
It makes me feel like you don't even have to watch that movie.
No. It's so, this movie, like, it's shot so well. It's acted so well. Like, Dave Bautista made me be like, I was like,
yeah, and
he needs an Academy Award.
In the 5 minutes he was in this movie,
I was blown away by his performance, because you could tell, like, he probably had a lot of help from Denis Villeneuve to be like, hey, maybe you should do like this, maybe this, because we know your character is whatever they call their replicant. Yeah, we know your character is a replicant, but you don't have to show the strength. It's more about like what you say to the character. It's
and he's like, hold on, let me give you these tiny glasses.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's why it's like I cannot wait to see what Dune is, because of everything that we've seen from we haven't even seen any footage or any behind the scenes or anything.
Just him and the cast list are like, yeah. Okay.
Just from that, I'm just like blown away. I cannot wait to see what it is. One of my favorite films of this past decade has got to be Moonlight. Like the small independent film that is about not only a young and then the life of a black man, but the life of a poor black man, the life of a poor gay black man. Not only is nominated for Best Picture, but wins Best Picture. It just goes to show you, look at last decade. Brokeback Mountain was nominated, and it was the Best Picture of the year, right? 2004, Best Picture, right? Everyone, the Golden Globes gave it to them. Everyone knew, right? They were going in, and it loses to Crash. Of all the movies it could lose to, it loses to Crash. This movie that, in hindsight, is like, it's full of nothing but racists and bigots and nothing but terrible people. And you could say like, oh, that's what the film is supposed to be, but it's like, no, this movie's not good. And the fact that 10 plus years later, a film like Moonlight can beat something that was the front runner, that is La La Land.
Literally everyone thought was gonna get it.
Well, all the white people thought.
Yeah, everyone.
Yeah, like literally, like everyone. We had already written it off. We were already like, La La Land's gonna win because the Academy doesn't care about like these real good films. They want to give it to something where it's like, oh, white people who love jazz and telling you why explaining why jazz is good.
Yeah, you guys talk about wanting like inclusion and diversity.
They have black people.
Yeah, and
did you see that black couple in the trailer dancing?
And the guy, he likes jazz. That's black music.
Yeah, you could say maybe he's like he's kind of ethnic too, right? Because what's Ryan Gosling really, right?
Canadian.
Oh, there you go. He's some kind of ethnic. But but the fact that like this film that is just like it's beautifully shot. The director, this is his second film, and it wins. Like and even like the win itself was so like out of nowhere that when they mixed up the cards. The two people presenting who were like so old that they're like, it's like they haven't made films in forever. They're looking at it and they couldn't even like decipher what the
couldn't fathom in their head.
Yeah, they were like, oh, it has to be La La Land because it says La La Land on here, even though the card said nothing like that. And it's like, well, duh, La La Land. And then like when they get up there and they're like, no, like no, Moonlight. When like that whole screw up, just like. And I think it also came at a time when I think a lot of people were feeling down about like the politics of like the country. I think people wanted like kind of like a win, but like, yeah, it's just kind of, it's like, wow, like they actually like gave a Best Picture award to the Best Picture. Crazy.
One of my favorite movies this last 10 years, which showed like that we talked about with the old school coming back and be like, let me do this justice. Prometheus.
Ooh, yes.
The fact that he came back.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, so what I wanted to originally do, you know how like you guys love this movie I did back in the day and how I want to continue, but I didn't get to do that. But now I'm back and I'm going to do exactly what I wanted to do. And then he gave us this like insane ancient alien movie.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, and then because at the end, me and you were literally like, "Oh my god, what's gonna happen?"
We sat
so excited
in the hotel room, and we were like, "Oh, that's all we talked about."
Yeah, but then we came to reality, and everyone's like, "I hated it."
Oh, why did they do this? Why did they do that? And it's like, I just hate when in things they explain things too, where they're like, well, he's like, well, I think the air is like breathable in here. And he's like, okay, and he takes off his helmet, and nothing happens, right? Yeah. And he's alive. Why would he take off his helmet? Why would they take off their helmets? It's like, they just said they think that it's oxygenated. Like that's what David said. He's an android. He's telling you, like he's not gonna lie to you. I mean, later he does because he wants to question his own creators, like we are doing in the film. It's like that's also too. It's got all these layers that I feel like people missed. Yeah. And they wanted their hand held.
And honestly, it's because it wasn't an alien film.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And it sucks because what he did with that movie was he took this, at least for us, a super interesting thing about like ancient aliens or whatever. He took that idea, made a whole movie about it, literally built a universe. And then everyone was like, yeah, but I wanted Alien.
And what I love, too, is that, remember that one guy's video you showed me, where even years ago after Alien just came out, how in that magazine, Ridley Scott said what he wanted for the sequel.
Yeah.
Like, he
straight up said, like, how come, he even said, like, in the movie, no one talks about
the jockey.
Yeah,
at the time it was
space jockey. But he's like, that's a whole different thing of like, why was he there? Who is that guy? What does this really mean? And the fact that everyone was just like, yeah, but Alien. And he came back and was like, I'm going to explore this. Everyone hated it. And then the second part we got to it, as much as I enjoyed it, I know it's fucked up because he didn't get to do what he wanted to do.
Because he was trying to do both. He was trying to give us a sequel to Prometheus and give us another Alien. And it's like he should have just made a sequel to Prometheus. And then what's so stupid too is that afterwards, when they saw Alien Covenant, they're like, "Well, how come he didn't just make Prometheus 2?
Yeah.
I wanted a Prometheus 2 instead of this." It's like, oh my fucking god! I just want to. Yeah. But it's funny too because like in that video, like the guy even says like, "Well, I didn't really like Prometheus, but like you have to give him credit for like sticking to that idea." It's like, yeah, you got to give him a bunch of credit. Like he didn't want to explore anything to do with the xenomorphs. He had like a whole like idea of like that there's more to this universe,
and it's a tragedy that I think we'll never like give up because there was so much there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the movie itself was amazing. Like if I wanted a sci-fi movie, that is like a sci-fi movie, done in the best possible way. But everyone wasn't on board because it wasn't exactly what they thought. And he basically had to give away this universe because there wasn't a xenomorph in there. And I didn't like it.
Like, who cares? Xenomorphs are cool up until a certain extent. We see that with the movies. Like, yeah, the first one's good, right? The second one, I haven't seen it, so it's good. I keep hearing. Then you get to the third one, and it's like, oh. And then you get to Resurrection, you're like, oh. And then you get to Alien versus Predator, and you're like,
interesting.
Yeah.
But but see, the one thing that I love about those movies is it built on this idea that there was a connected universe.
Yes, and that too.
Yeah, the fact that there was these ancient beings coming and doing this shit.
See, it's like you can only take them so far. And then it just starts wearing out. It's like, whereas, like, when we came up with our ideas for where they could go, like, what if they get to the engineer's planet and then we find out that the reason why they created us was because they were trying to figure out, like, why they were created. Like, we had a whole idea of where we could go with it, right? And I think that's what Ridley Scott wanted to do. But, like, I think for the last, decade and for just this year, too, like, of all the favorite films I had, and I would say also for the decade, like that just to me was like, yeah, that kind of sums up everything. Was Endgame, Avengers Endgame. Along with like Infinity War, but this movie was just a culmination of everything, right? Of what we'd seen prior to the decade, just in the middle of this decade, we finally got like all these like strings that were thrown out, and like we were like, well, how are they going to tie this all together? Two directors, the Russo brothers, that were able to piece all these things together and give us not only a conclusion to the Avengers series, but a conclusion to every other series where you could say this is like the end for now. This movie was just everything I wanted. The battles were awesome. Like the whole idea of like time travel, where it was also kind of like a revisit to like everything we wanted to see in the past. Just that one scene, right, where he's like on your left, and then all the holes just start showing up, right, and everyone's like literally every character that we had seen prior to this, because when people like sit there and say like, well, like, oh, well, the MCU is like not cinema, and like the MCU is just like dumb, and like, why would you sit there and watch all these? It's like, this is the reason why you sat and watched Captain America: The First Avenger, and Thor: The Dark World, and Ant-Man, right? Like you sat there through all these things just so you could finally see them all on screen together, interacting, and no one has to sit there and say, oh, hey, I'm Spider-Man from Spider-Man, and no one has to sit there and be like, oh, wait, who's that? Oh, it's Valkyrie? Who's Valkyrie? You know what I mean? Like, no one has to sit there and explain anything, and along with, like, Infinity War. I think that helped to set it up, too, and, like, from...
1-2 punch?
Yes, that just... Because it gave you, like, that crazy journey of like losing and then like losing again, and then when you think like nothing good can come from it, they finally have to all stand together and take on this one villain who has been in the shadows the whole time, but like but his presence was always felt.
I want to give a shout out to, I would say, really helped kick off this decade of let's make sci-fi fun again. Inception. It was a movie that I think it's easily forgotten because it came out so long ago. But I think what I loved about it was that he moved from the Batman series, right? And everyone's so in love with that, right? But he moved on from it and it was like, yeah, let me fuck with your mind a little bit. And I get it. Now people make it a joke, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, and still even now, like it's still a great movie. It was such a spectacle to watch. Mm-hmm. When you say, I want a big movie, that's what you think of. Mm-hmm. And it's almost it's so easy to forget about the cast too.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like the idea of like, oh yeah, we're in this mine. Oh, whose mine are we in? Oh, what's really going on? It's like, oh yeah, is there a Batman in here? Who knows?
Ooh.
No, but there's a Robin. No, but I mean, like, I think Christopher Nolan has had a pretty exceptional decade. Mm-hmm. But like, to me, that was like a kickoff to like what became afterwards. Because after that, like, you still had, you know, stuff like Ex Machina come out, Interstellar came out.
Ooh. I forgot. Oh, that movie's so good.
Yeah.
I don't know why. See, there's so many movies that come out and people hate them, but it's like I don't get it. Like, Interstellar is good.
But yeah, I mean, for me, like, sci-fi has always been a thing for me, and I think this last decade, like, it's so cool to see, like I said, with like horror, sci-fi, and all this stuff, how it's still like you get something as big as Inception, right? But then you could get something as small as Ex Machina, right? Something that takes place in one area. It only has 3 characters.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it all comes out, and it's like, doesn't matter how big budget it is or how small indie it is.
Yeah.
Also, we couldn't end this decade without talking about probably one of the best shows that ever exists, Westworld.
Yes.
Something that
I love Westworld.
Never thought I wanted. Literally, as I'm watching these trailers, I'm like, that's stupid. All it took was for me to sit down and watch it with my sister, and I was like, I'm fucking hooked.
But it's like, it's everything that we love in like a show. It's like, it's got a mystery, but also like that mystery in itself is like also wrapped up in like this whole idea of like, wait, what does it mean to be like a human, and like, are the things that we're seeing on the series like true or not? You question your own reality too, because certain characters turn out to be like not human, and you're like, well, then who is human and who's not? Like, it's just such a great, like, yes, like, mindfuck of a show, but like, it's done so well, and I hate that like people don't appreciate it as much. Like, they always talk about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, because for me, when I saw that show, like, watching that first season, it was like, it was literally like watching the best movie ever every single episode.
Yes.
Because the acting is phenomenal. The story is like so intriguing. Everything about it is like, what the fuck's going on? God, I can't stop watching this. The second season, I really think it's still great. Yeah. I do feel like because it took so long, people fell off. Yeah. But it still played off of, I think, which is cool, because I think with this next season they're gonna stray away from, but it played with this idea of like what's going on in the here and now, what's really how is whatever, you know, because I think the first season did it so well. This one's never gonna look as good as that, but it was still so great because you're still trying to figure out what's going on. You're still in this mystery. You're still like, wait, so how did that? So wait, oh, so she's not dead? Oh, fuck. You know what I mean? Like, everything about those first 2 seasons, I know it's taken, 4 years to watch 2 seasons of a TV show.
So fucking stupid.
But like,
they did it this way.
Yeah, it is so good. It's a show that I never thought I wanted. But like, when he said, "Oh, Westworld," I was like, oh, sounds dumb. I was like, yeah, it's off that one like '70s movie from back in the day.
Which I love that they just completely they took the simplest idea of that movie, they just threw out the rest of it.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's so fucking phenomenal. It honestly, this is like a TV show that you show people and say, why make a movie when you can make a TV show?
Exactly.
Easily one of the best TV shows to come out, and I'm so glad it came out towards the later end of this decade.
I think you're right. Yeah, the idea that not just horror but like sci-fi has gotten finally like, because like you see that with like Arrival getting nominated for Best Picture, and then I mean, The Shape of Water, like is that it's like horror sci-fi, but it's like romance and drama, and it's a strange mix, and like that's why I think Guillermo del Toro totally deserved Best Director and Best Picture, because with that film, like it just transcends all genres to be like
he literally made his main character someone who can't speak, and then you still felt all of her emotions.
Yeah, and then you pick the perfect person to be a villain, Michael Shannon, because he's a villain in real life, isn't he? I just picture him, and he's perpetually just the villain and everything.
He was in that, I forgot what it's called, but it's like they think they spot a Sasquatch or something, and he plays like a shop owner, and he's like a very like timid, kept guy. But technically, he does do bad because he gets drunk, and that's who they see. And then instead of telling everyone, he perpetuates the lie. So technically, still doing bad.
He's like the he right? Doesn't he perfectly play like the bad guy? Yeah, this decade's been like
I said, it could partially be because my vision of like what is film and all this stuff has changed this last 10 years. The years prior to, it was easy for me to just sit down and watch it. And obviously, I would say partially that too was because that was after we left high school and stuff, and after we left like film school and stuff, and really like that opens a whole different door to you, right?
Yep.
So maybe that's partially because of it too, but really, like even when you go back and watch things from like the 90s, the late 90s, right? And you watch these films and it's like, yeah, some of this just doesn't hold up. But yeah, I don't know. It's this decade I feel like is, I'm not saying it's the best decade that ever existed in film, but I would say it's probably one of the most intriguing. So much happened in such a small amount of time.
Yeah.
Like you said, with like technology exploding, like we went from having normal televised TV shows to be like, yeah, of course you only want 10 episodes a year, right? And it's like, no, but give it to me.
Yeah.
And like that's, I don't know, that's just something that it's never happened before, and really this decade kicked it off. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years? Hell, who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years?
Or even just next year.
I mean, there's so much more we could talk about, but we'll just say thank you for listening.
Yep. Thanks for listening to us rant and rave.
Thank you for listening for the last year, if you have been.
Yes.
Or even, whatever. But just supporting us, it means a lot. And, if you want to do so, go ahead and like, subscribe, whatever, any streaming services you got. We are on Spotify. So if you're on Spotify, check that out. If not, we're still on Apple, Stitcher, whatever.
And we're on YouTube if you want to watch us on YouTube.
Or you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter at INTB_podcast. Or you can email us at intbpodcast@gmail.com. Email us, tag us, DM us, whatever, and just let us know, like, what are your favorite, like, not only what are your favorite films this year, but what are your favorite films this last 10 years? Is there a TV show that exploded this, last 10 years that you love? Or are you excited to see where everything's headed? Or do you wish we would revert back to pre-2010?
Yeah. Just let us know what did you like? What did you hate? What did you What did you think about us? Like, did you think we did a good job this year? Did you think maybe we should quit next year? Like we're always open to like hearing any kind of criticism, no matter what.
Yeah, and like we've always said, we're always willing to make things better, to try to change for the best. If there's anything you guys want to see us do, let us know. We're still trying to figure out how to do a YouTube thing, maybe a streaming thing. That's still something that we're trying to work on. Is there different content you would want to hear? This next year is really, I think this last year, it was a year for us to like try to just better ourselves with the podcast. And now that we've reached a milestone of like 100 episodes, and now, we're trying to get on every single streaming service, whatever. I think now we can really try to push ourselves and see like, what could we do, So who knows, like you might get different content, you might get more of one thing or the other, or who knows, but we're always trying different things and trying to see what sounds better, or what plays better. And I guess really this is a thank you guys so much for listening. We guys hope you had a great year, but until then, guys, as always, remember,
it's not that bad.